Earlier this year, I left my drift car completely stranded when we found the abandoned Genesis coupe, and I stole the motor from it and stuffed it in the abandoned car. And actually, only a few weeks after that happened, I went and picked up this bad boy, and I've been teasing it in the background of all the videos ever since. And today, it is finally time to move on with the teasing and actually start building this motor and get it ready to go in that car. So welcome to the uncut, full-length version, tearing down this K24Z3, building up this K24Z3, and getting it ready to go inside of my Genesis coupe, which is gonna take a lot of custom fabrication, which we're not doing in this video, but the engine will be ready in this video. You guys get it, let's go. So here it is. This is a K24Z3 from a 2010 Honda Accord coupe. It's obviously an automatic. You can see the automatic flywheel right there. And we really don't know much about it. We picked this thing up a couple weeks after I pulled the motor out of the Genesis. We got it from some guy's private shop in the city, and he didn't really know much about it either, other than he had been collecting a couple and they were moving shops and he had to let this one go. So I knew I was in for a couple surprises, but I didn't think we'd get the surprise that I got while doing this. And so we got started on stripping this engine down. I started with all the tiny little dinky brackets and stuff to build up confidence to the fact that I was about to explode this engine all over my garage. And thankfully, disassembling an engine is the easy part. Popped off the fuel rail, the water pump housing, and then we got here. We just hit this for like 20 minutes consecutively with the air gun, and we couldn't get anything to happen. We can't figure out how to do it with a breaker bar or anything, so we had to pick up this fancy $60 frickin' tool to take off one bolt. Max says he's used one of these before. It seems pretty straightforward, but I'm not thrilled that we have to bust it out. Nicely packaged, makes me feel like I got my $60 worth. There you go. So this guy should hold this from spinning that way. So I can breaker bar the thing down and you can breaker bar this one down.
Yes, correct.
God, dude. If this works though, this will be kind of cool because I have never seen this tool in my entire life. And I'm sure someone's gonna watch this that can actually learn from this.
You ready?
I don't know, dude. Oh, God. Oh, I'm coming under. What the dude? Okay, go again. You ready? Oh, good God.
Okay. There you go.
Definitely way too loose for this, but the gun deserves a win. Quest 2.
That should just pop right off.
That's what you say.
It should. You want a hand?
Yeah. Oh, all right, there we are.
Watch, because the keyway's in here.
Yeah, it's right there.
Yeah, we can't lose that.
So that's off. Honestly, this engine looks really good. This is way better than the K20 we had. There's like no oil leaks coming from anywhere other than the valve cover. I mean, the valve covers notoriously leak and notoriously flake. This thing looks like absolute ass. And the best news is that the R40s, K24s, you can't buy valve covers for them. So we got to fix this one instead of buying like a sweet K-tuned one because every K series in the world, except the K24Z motors, share a valve cover. So nobody makes one just for these motors, which kind of sucks. But that's something we can deal with later. Honestly, this thing's in really good shape. I mean, it's oxidized all over the place because it was obviously winter driven for a couple of years. But other than that, like I said, there's no leaks or any major issues with it. This stuff should be super easy to clean up. Everything in the head looks a little bit burnt, but like really clean. This is the only thing I was able to view when I actually purchased the engine. So I bought it based on this looking okay. Timing chain has tension. Everything seems to be good. Ideally, we can get this cleaned up almost as fresh as that. Not kind of like this, how it's all scratched up. I don't remember exactly how it turned out last time, but I picked up some extra boys, so you can go ham on the anodized side, and I will worry with the oxidized. You can go ham on the oxidized side, and I'll go on the greasy side.
Nice.
Now I get that most of the engine is gonna be hidden inside of a car, but I was really trying my best to do this without grooving the metal too bad. And Mac actually told me that the wire wheel set that I got was steel. And apparently you can get a brass set, and the brass does not carve up the aluminum so bad. So if you're doing this at home, get the brass wheel set and do your best to keep it away from the paper towels that are keeping dust out of your water pump housing.
I am so happy I stood here.
But even with the steel wire wheels, this still came out really good. It's a little misleading because actually where it's shiny is too much. If you guys look right here, it's only supposed to look like that. So a lot of this is already beyond how much we needed to sand it, which is totally fine. Overkill is better than underkill. I have this guy on the floor. This is from an LS. I just posted something on Instagram for any of you guys that follow me on Instagram. I blurred out all of the table, all of the engine, and I didn't blur this out on purpose. Just to f with you guys. I know there's gonna be people that think I like made a mistake and forgot to blur that out. Put it there on purpose. Obviously we don't have an LS. And I also don't mention this enough. If you guys do not have one of these Eastwood 360 rotation engine stands, you need to get one. You guys seen when we want to get in on all the cracks on this side, just grab this boy, give it a little rotation, get in all the cracks on this side. When you want to go to the other side, give it another rotation, all the cracks on this side. Super easy, relatively affordable. I have a discount code for them. I'll put it right here. I don't remember exactly what it is. I will leave a link in the description down below. Go check out Eastwood, grab one of these. That code works for the whole site. This specifically is game changing. And then we're just back to disassembly. I actually chose to go ahead and do a new timing chain on this engine. Last time I did a K-swap, I reused the timing chain and tensioner, which is totally fine to do. However, since then, I have seen and heard of a couple people with timing chain issues, and it's literally like $150 maybe to do an entire timing chain kit, so it's just worth it. The engine's already open. A new chain and a new tensioner can prevent a lot of damage. Perfect timing. The FedEx guy just came and dropped off these packages. Shout out to the FedEx guy. He's the absolute coolest. Literally comes to the back gate, like comes and actually delivers me my stuff. He doesn't just leave it out in the rain. The first time in my entire life I've had a cool FedEx guy. And today I actually learned something really cool. So you can see right here, when you're using brake clean, it dries up really, really quickly. As you're scrubbing, everything just kind of evaporates and it leaves like a dirty, oily residue on the pistons as well as anything else that you're trying to use it on. And I've always just accepted that to be normal. But I got really bored of continuously spraying brake clean on here, so I started trying some degreaser chemicals that I actually had in my cabinet, and I found something that works so unexpectedly well. You can see right here, even when I took a little break to just lightly scrape off some of the carbon with a pick, nothing actually dried up. There's still pools of fluid. I was able to just go right back to scrubbing it when I was done, and I ended up only really needing the brake clean for a final cleanup. This crud cutter cleaner degreaser, it's actually a stain remover. You guys remember I used this on the carpet of the Genesis when I did the detail to get rid of some of the stains. It says though degreaser on it, so I fired it on here and this is the first time using something like this has outperformed brake clean. And now that I had figured out that crud cutter was the move, it was on to cleaning up the rest of these cylinder heads. You can see that if I just spray it on all the cylinder heads at once, it kind of just like starts melting away all the carbon while I'm working on the first one. By the time I get to the second one, it's an easy task. Then it was time to move on to the head. So I realized I never took the spark plugs out, so I started there, flipped this thing on its head, and with my newly discovered favorite crud cutter in hand, I just started pre-soaking the cylinder head, and I was actually so excited to see it melting the carbon off of the head that I was completely oblivious to the fact that the biggest problem with this entire engine was right in front of my face. I got to work with the Scotch-Brite pad, and I even took my pick again and very gently just cleaned up some of the flakiness around the outside of these valves, and I made it all the way to the point where I was showing off how good of a job I did before I realized. What the f is this? That's a hole. The valve is broken. I've never even seen that in my entire life. I'll bring it to the top. It would be that side to the back, so that would be this one. There's not a single speck, or would be right here. No, it would be right here. Regardless. Do K24s have this as like a common problem? What I did notice is that these valves are super clean. I haven't touched them yet. I just sprayed them. These ones I already cleaned up. These ones I haven't touched yet. I just sprayed. But these ones were super like gunky and gummy. I don't know if the gunky and gumminess came from this because it was running poorly, or if it was gunky and gummy for some other reason which led to it cracking. I get to do something I've never done before, which is valves. Now obviously we're gonna need at least one new valve, but I figured I would go ahead and clean up the rest of the head while I was here so that it's nice and clean for when the valves do show up. Also, another really big pro to this Eastwood stand, I can spin the engine all the way on its side and just rifle brake clean in there to make sure that all of the debris and the dust and the gunge from me cleaning this head is washed out of the coolant passages so that no problems are caused when I finally get this engine running. And while I was working away on this, Mac actually sanded down the entire valve cover and timing chain cover with 320, light enough that it wouldn't score anything and aggressive enough to remove all the oxidization. Just another friendly reminder, nothing ever goes as planned, and that is okay. Whether everybody on YouTube shows it or not, this is life, and everybody kind of gets served the same shit. It's just what you do with it that counts. So here's where we're at. I ordered all of the exhaust valves for this engine. I actually went ahead, me and Jordy did a quick leak test. All the valves are fine except for the one that was burnt.
Doesn't look broken to me.
And it's actually surprising I didn't find it sooner, because when I ripped the head off, I was rewatching some of the footage, there was obvious valve explosion on the one cylinder that was the cleanest cylinder. For some reason, I was just like, oh, this one's got a lot of dirt on it. Weird, and I just kept going with my life instead of checking the valve. So I don't know how I didn't notice sooner, but other than that burnt valve, all the other valves are fine. They all seal, none of them leak, which is good, I guess, but interesting at the same time. So I actually watched a video from my friends over at Speed Academy, and they used this Lyle hammer tool to do the valves. So I picked up the hammer tool they recommended, I picked up a valve keeper tool, and I also picked up a completely different whole entire kit that seems to me a lot simpler than this. This seems a little bit more aggressive. So in here, I would love to tell you exactly how to use it. Don't know for sure, but what I do know is you put these two things on the engine, this bar kind of goes across, and you're able to calmly remove the valves and the valve springs and all that kind of jazz. So I've never done valves before. My valves actually aren't even here. I paid for expedited shipping. They were supposed to show up Friday. They haven't showed up at all. So if you look at this valve and this valve specifically, they're disgusting. And contrary to what you might think, I don't know why that happens. I don't know what causes that, and I haven't had a lot of time to put research into it to figure it out. I just assumed the engine's higher mileage than it appeared. The valve got burnt. Maybe he had some kind of tune on it. And I'm just gonna do up the entire exhaust row of valves, which I have never done before. Like I said, I watched Pete's video from Speed Academy, but that's it. So this should be interesting. And so the way this tool works, you actually need to compress the spring. So I put the head back on the engine. It's actually pretty straightforward. These two brackets go on each side of the head, and then you slide this pole through the middle, which is gonna be your leverage post. Oh, bad news. Those things are in the fucking way, dude. Maybe I can use this. Now this is a spring compression tool. It's not actually meant to pop the keepers out, but I felt like it would be a lot gentler of a process with this tool. However, I quickly learned that that's just not the case. Oh, dude, that was the easiest thing ever. This guy just seemed so much more gentle, so I was looking forward to a gentle removal process, but this thing is sick. There's a magnet in here, I believe, so it grabbed the keeper, well, the one keeper, I got one out with the other tool, and it grabbed the little top hat, and then the spring should just come off, and then this valve hopefully just pops out the bottom once it, oh, our valve. Look at this. I obviously took out the burnt one first. Oh my, I've never seen anything like that, dude. I really wish I could tell you guys why that happened. I don't know. I really don't know. That's insane. It looks like someone took a bite out of it. So off came the brackets. Definitely gonna need to return this tool because I don't think I'll ever need it. And I started just whacking valves with the Lyle tool. And so once I had all of the valves we're gonna replace out, I went ahead and continued to clean up this head a little bit further. And this is actually a really, really cool view. You guys can see the crud cutter actually like fizzing and reacting with the dirt and carbon buildup that is on the head. I basically just went ahead, cleaned all the seats and then all the intake valves to perfection to get ready to install the new exhaust valves. These are as good as they're gonna get, dude. I think I did a pretty good job. I didn't want to disturb too much because like I said, they were already sealed. Like when we tested them, they didn't leak. So I don't want to cause problems, but everything there is dialed in. You can see even these intake valves I got super nice, so that's good. And while I was doing that, in two individual boxes, because Rock Auto's the best. Thank God, dude. Oh yes. There's only one test left to be had. Nice. You guys actually saw when I took all the valves out, having these all kind of like, I don't know what you would call this. It's like not top dead center. It's just everything's perfectly centered. That was enough room for me to hammer and all the valves slide through. Problem is, putting it back, we want the valves to not move because we want to slide the keepers back over the valves from what I've picked up. I have seen a couple people do this on a workbench and they just kind of flip it over and press into the bench. You guys know I'm not really a worrisome person, but I definitely did not want to implode these brand new valves that I just paid for. So I went ahead and I laid out 3 layers of rags on the bench so that when I was hammering the keepers back in, which is admittedly more scary than hammering them off, I wouldn't go ahead and blow the valves up. And what actually ended up working best was on top of my cushion, I folded up a rag that specifically fit into like the piston circle on the bottom of the head, which gave maximum resistance against these valves. Holy dude, look at that. And then pretty much it's just putting a spring back over it, putting the top hat back on, putting the keepers in the hole, and then I actually just with my hand kind of lined up the valve into the keepers. You could feel it kind of clicking in and out before I whacked it to make sure that I didn't accidentally go ahead and cause any damage to these new valves. And now that I had all the valves installed, it was time for a leak test, which failed very miserably. Turns out you have to lap even new valves, and I didn't even know what lapping was until now. So I picked up this lapping compound, then I actually just grabbed a piece of boost hose. One end slid over the valve once it was inserted, and one end I just cranked down the drill onto, and I successfully created a lapping tool. And basically the point of this is we just installed brand new valves into valve seats that have a little bit of pitting and grooving from the previous valves and all the yuck that they accumulated. So we're pretty much sanding the valve against the seat until both of them have a fresh mating surface so they seal with each other. Even though the seats are pitted, they would have still sealed against the previous valves because the previous valves would have had the opposing pitting. Oh, hallelujah, dude, that looks like a fucking brand new head. Goddamn. Basically what I would do is put a little bit of oil on the shaft of the valve, slide the valve in, put the lapping compound on, and you can hear right when the contact is made, the grinding noise, which is the sanding of the lapping compound, is a lot more aggressive and noticeable. And as I hold it in there with my finger, the grinding gets less intense. So every time the grinding got less intense, I would pop it away and put it back to kind of just let that material breathe for a second and let some of the heavier grits come back to the surface. And I basically just spent the next hour lapping all of the new valves and then reinstalling the springs for the second time. Thankfully, they passed the next leak test, so we were able to move on and start cleaning up some of these parts that we had recently sanded. Now I went ahead and obviously blew these with the air compressor and then brake cleaned them just to get anything that the air compressor didn't get off. So you'll notice that a lot of these parts in the next little bit of the video are going to have like a really dry, dirty look to them, and that's just because the brake clean dried up all that oil residue and made it look disgusting. I also went ahead and took the oil pan off because I thought that my timing chain kit was going to come with an oil pump chain, so I was prepping to be able to do that at the same time. Turns out, I guess I just bought the wrong kit. I'm not entirely sure what happened, but all I really did here was prep a couple mating surfaces for a fresh gasket. Check it out. You guys probably seen as I was going through everything that some of this was still a little bit dirty and ugly, so I went ahead and I completely cleaned all of the head. Timing chain cover, same thing. You guys can see the back. It's disgusting actually, but that's just a good thing. It means it's clean. Everything has been cleaned and air compressed and is just almost there, dude. I'm getting over this. And so we're gonna try a new product today, which is the Rust-Oleum high heat paint. This stuff is 2000 degrees Fahrenheit. Crazy amount of heat. I've never seen anything like this. These cans actually came out of the States. I had to pull some strings to get the good stuff. This is aluminum color. We're gonna try and keep this engine looking as OEM plus as possible. You guys will see it in a minute. And we also got the white for the valve cover. So since I feel like the beginning of this video dragged on way longer than I wanted to, let's start making some fucking progress, shall we? If you guys have seen me paint in the past, you know that normally I just tape everything. However, I was running a little bit low on tape, so I was trying to save myself a trip to the store by using some paper and just basically taping around the edges. And the paper unexpectedly came in handy when I was trying to do the head, because I was able to just kind of put it over top of everything and just tape where the valve cover gasket goes. You'll also notice I taped over a couple sensors because the actual metal on the sensor was disgusting. So I figured we'd just paint it all up so it looks nice and fresh. And something that a lot of people commented on that I'd never addressed in the main channel video was the fact that I did not have enough cardboard to get this done. Normally my recycling bin is full of cardboard and I run over there and just steal a bunch when I'm painting. And in this video, the recycling had just gone out. So I was actually almost out of cardboard. So I went ahead and I put the cardboard directly under the things I was painting, and then I walked around with a squirt bottle and soaked the floor. This is a technique that I learned when I was actually painting an entire car. If you wet the floor, it keeps the dust down because all the paint kind of hits the water and then dries up into that instead of either sticking to the floor or just creating a massively dusty mess.
The spray on that's way more than I was expecting. This might go really easily.
Dude, this might be some of the best Rust-Oleum paint I think I've ever used. It has, like, it just looks like a regular can. It's got like a regular nib, but it has the most powerful spray. It's not that the top to bottom is big, it's that it shoots hard. Like, it gets in all these grooves so well. I've never had such an easy time painting, and it looks great. One coat on here, one coat on everything else. I'm using this coat as a primer coat. The blotchiness from the oxidization of the whatever aluminum, lots of words, lots of paint in the air. Point is, I wanted to kind of prime it, so that's what that is.
But you can see, dude, this is gonna look so good.
So before I hit it with a second coat, I went ahead and just made sure the floor was wet again, and we moved on to coat number 2. Now in this coat, I actually went ahead and started painting the valve cover as well, which was not working as well as I wanted it to. I actually grabbed a different paint for that because there was no white, and I just have regrets. I really should have just either chose a different color or chose a different paint. We're not going to get into it, but it just didn't work well. I also went ahead and I used this 2000 degree Rust-Oleum paint as kind of like a primer. So everything got a coat of this because this was the highest temperature paint that I had. And then simple things like the pulleys or the valve covers, I went ahead and painted over top of that, which helped give everything a more coherent finish and also just gave that base layer of heat resistance, which hopefully does something good for me in the long run. And after a night of drying, it was time to take this tape off, and you guys can see everything is looking so good. Like I was telling you guys, K24Z motors, mega pain in the ass. Inline Pro, never even heard of them. ARP doesn't make head studs for a K24Z motor. How are you supposed to do the big boosties? I don't know. Shout out to Garage 16. They're like the only place I can find that actually carries these Inline Pros. They're local Honda guys, cool shop, and they have like some of the only K24Z stuff in stock. Head studs. Are you fucking serious? It's ARP grease. Come on, guys. I'll leave a link to Garage 16 down below. Check them out if you guys are local. You can get whatever's going on here. Interestingly enough, the instructions call for you to use oil as lube on these head studs, which sounds contradictory, but it actually does make sense if you think about it. So I dunked the end of all of these studs in oil, then I threaded them by hand into the block. Then I went around and torqued them to 2 foot-pounds. Not even audible in the video. You can't even tell my torque wrench hit that, but I did it. We also ordered up a full head gasket kit from Rock Auto. So I threw the head gasket on there. Then I put the head on. Then I went ahead and I used the ARP grease on these Inline Pro head bolt nuts. It was too hard to get this little packet in the head, so I put them in the nuts, and then I just finger tightened everything on. I wiped up all the extra grease, and then I went ahead and torqued everything down to spec. Come on, it's because I invited you outside to help. Let's go, dude. I am nearing K20 assembly guru. Continuing on with reassembly of this engine, I didn't have any assembly lube, so I used what goes in there anyways, which is just engine oil. And I just finger bombed oil into all of these seats before I put the cams on. And then once I got the cams in, I went ahead and I did the same thing. And I just gooped oil on top of all the cams and on top of all the fingers for the VTEC rockers or lifters or whatever you call these things. Now it was time for us to move on to a fresh timing chain setup. New chain, old chain, starting at the same point up here, and they're the same. This one might be just a kiss stretched out, but I mean, it wasn't bad. It's not like it ever failed or anything, and we needed to replace it for any bad reason, which is a good thing. And since I already had my oil jug out on the floor, everything here was a pretty easy process. I threw the chain roughly where it needed to go, finger bombed some oil onto the guides before I bolted the guides up. Then I went ahead and I lined up the timing chain markers on the cam and on the bottom sprocket, which is actually so easy to do. I feel like a lot of people are scared of timing, but it is dummy proof. Line up the dots on the cams with the dots on the chain and you are good to go. I kept tension there with my hand while I installed the tensioner, and I actually didn't pull the pin right away. I was waiting for Courtney because she had never seen me pull the pin on a timing chain tensioner and she thought it would be cool, which proved to be a mistake that you guys will find out very shortly. With my tail tucked, I pulled this oil pan back off, cleaned all the oil off the mating surfaces, and went ahead and put some gasket maker on this oil pan. Repeated this process for the timing chain cover. Here's where I found my mistake. See, are you f***ing serious? It's not on the right bob. I can already see it's off the bob. Okay. We don't have a lot of time because it's all wet now. Dude, this is not ideal. This is the opposite of ideal. Not pulling the pin right away allowed there to be enough slack on this chain that while I was doing something with the oil pan, probably hitting it with the impact, the chain actually skipped a tooth. Thankfully, I noticed this and I didn't just pull the pin, popped the chain over one tooth on this bottom sprocket. Then I went ahead and just pulled the tensioner pin right there so that we did not lose timing on this chain again. We can officially start to make a dent in all of the actual fun stuff to install on this engine. You guys know the theme for the Genesis Drift car is white and purple. The car is white and my full steering wheel, seats, quick release, shifter, everything inside of the car is like an anodized purple. And for months on end at some point, you guys were commenting on my videos saying, do an MPC hardware kit on your whole engine when I did the K20, which I never ended up doing. But for this engine, I decided it would be worth it. I think like a really clean drift car with a super cool and clean engine bay will just be like the little extra touch. So this is actually called 100 Proof Hardware. This is a division of MPC Motorsports. They make tons of like K-Swap parts and Honda parts specifically, and I have a discount code for you guys to use. It is ROBBIE. Go on MPC Motorsports website and you guys can save 10% on anything on the website. They are awesome. You guys have seen me use their hardware and stuff before, but this is definitely one of the coolest things I have gotten. Look at this, dude. It doesn't look like a lot, but this is like everything for this engine. What's really cool is all these bolts on the backside say what they are. So this is VTEC solenoid and the oil cooler solenoid hardware. And so obviously all of these ones will fit into an according little purple washer right here. But in the same breath, the timing chain gasket maker is drying. So let's see if we can't figure out what we're doing here. While it was a little extra time consuming, I found it easiest just to stand all the bolts up and slide all the washers on first. So when you go to throw them in, they are already prepped. It makes everything so much easier. And thankfully, even though I blabbed for way too long, we got these in there while everything was still wet. You guys can see it oozing out every time I cranked on a bolt, which is super satisfying. Honestly, I thought these were gonna stick out really far. When I was looking at them, I was like, these are gonna be way too aggressive. They stick out as much as a regular freaking bolt, dude. Except the regular bolt looks like a gusty piece of poo, and these look beautiful. Timing chain, head gaskets and stuff are like mandatory. If you're gonna boost a car, build an engine, you gotta replace them. This, not so much, but we're already here and they do wear out. So today, we're also installing a fresh water pump. What's kind of nice is like when you put on a new piece like this, and it's all nice aluminum and black, and you have just previously painted everything, so it will look at home. Another non-exciting piece. Alto. Oh, is this Spanish? Oh God, I can't read that. It's funny how like in the States, this is probably so normal to you guys, but for me, it's not French. Not that I understand French, but this seems just foreign now. In case you haven't understood yet, we had to spend a lot of money on this engine because it came with nothing. Where the alternator goes, your guess is as good as mine. Probably in this giant hole right here. Then I continued on with some of the more boring stuff. Threw on our freshly painted pulleys. Then I tried to change out these grommets inside of the valve cover, which was not a task I would like to do again. Okay, so you just got to give them a lot of force. I don't normally replace these guys, so I didn't realize they sucked so bad. Gasket kit came with a bunch of stuff. So let's see what we got here that we haven't used. I think this is for the wrong engine. I'm not gonna lie, that's not for me. These 4 guys are the things I just hammered out. Doing this is an evident issue. You'll never see me do that in my entire life ever again. Never gonna happen. That was just so pointless and it sucked the whole time. Before we go ahead and actually install the valve cover, this has been like a couple days. Should be good enough to sand. If it's not, we're gonna find out real quick. Courtney says she likes the white on the Honda. I don't know why she likes the white on the Honda. I feel like most of you guys are behind what I'm about to do. And if you're not, when I open the K-Tune box, you will be. Thankfully, once it was done though, we had a couple more 100-proof hardware pieces to really make this thing pop. Yes, I forgot to order spark plugs, all right? We dropped those in for no reason, just so you guys can see the little hardware pieces that go on top. Looks absolutely sick. This is all just hand tight because I'm gonna need to remove the valve cover, putting the engine in and out so I don't scratch it with the chain. But the point is there. So far, this is looking awesome. I'm actually super stoked. We have never built something that just looks so good. Like when you look at it, everything is not just fresh, but like shiny and just nice. Even these little bolts are pretty cool. And you notice I sanded the Honda right here because that gives you that like raw aluminum look, which kind of goes with the silver in between all the purples. But it also goes with some silver that we have right here in this box from my favorite boys over at K-Tune. This, oh, what a nasty reveal that was. Okay, take 2. And this is why we went ahead and left that brushed. We got a ton of good K-Tune stuff and I got it all in like the brushed aluminum finish. So you guys know K-Tune, K-Swap, K-Tune. Honda, K-Tune. They're the man, they're the, no, you can't say that about a company, eh? If a company could be the man, that's it. If a company could be the man, K-Tuned is the man. Here we have a K-Tuned brushed aluminum fuel rail. This guy comes with all of the fittings and little nibs and bolts and everything there. We have a oil cap. We have an oil dipstick, EP3 pulley kit. So basically this engine, ooh, the matte black. I never thought I'd be into that. You guys saw me put this on my K20 when I put it in the EK. This engine no longer has AC power steering situation. I'm not entirely sure what that's gonna be about, but that's for future when we get there. It's an adjustable pulley. As a belt stretches or anything, you can adjust it up and down, and it helps when you're doing swaps with everything changing and what you got. Don't have power steering, you have power steering, you don't have AC, you have AC. EP3 pulley kit, baby. This guy comes with bolts and a belt, which is actually very nice. And we have the K-Tuned auto tensioner, a brand new tensioner with a nice black pulley. Not only do most K-Swaps require these, but because we're going rear wheel drive, we had to get a rear wheel drive intake manifold. And when you get a rear wheel drive intake manifold, it sits backwards. So everything gets in the way. So apparently this is a setup that you can run. I think it'll make more sense on the car. I think this guy goes like this, bingo, bango. Oh, it doesn't work. Somehow the majority of K-Series engines stayed relatively the same. yet the Z3s, K24 Z3 and K24 Z7 even have differences between them, and I don't understand it. In this case, I should have ordered the adapter bracket and the EP3 pulley kit instead of the full tensioner. For some reason, this is the JDM absolute water pump housing, and this is a USDM auto tensioner. It's an easy enough mix-up with a super simple solution, so K-Tuned already shipped the adapter bracket for the EP3 pulley kit, which we can install once we go ahead and get this engine in there. Would have been nice to see it a little bit more complete, but regardless, it's going to be dialed in once we do the actual install. Thankfully, we still had a few other K-Tuned pieces. Everybody gets mad that this doesn't come, the sticker doesn't come on the thing. They do it on purpose. Watch. You put this guy on, okay? Just in case not everybody's threads are the same, because I'm sure they're not. I'm sure there's been a problem, which is why they started doing it like that, right? That's where mine maxed out. I can't get it tighter than that. Then, beautiful. I don't know, how do people complain about that? If it's messed up now, it's your fault. Maybe people complain because they suck. They can't center or something.
Or they stick it on before they put it on.
Yeah, because they're we also got a sweet dipstick from them. In this dipstick in the main channel video, I was super confused why it pops like that, but it turns out it's actually just for leverage. It's a handle. If you guys have ever held these dipsticks before, you know that they're not the easiest thing to pull out. Even the stock ones have a slight little tab for you to grab, but they're not easily accessible. So this one actually flips up like a handle, which is super cool, almost as cool as what we got inside of this box. Check this out. This is something that most of you guys have probably never seen before. This is an RHB Super 6 Turbo. These turbos are locally made by a company called RHB, and they are so sick, dude. This actually is the same company that if you've watched the channel for a while, you probably heard in Mac's car. He was all gassed up about his RHB Turbo. They are a triple ball bearing. Where did it go? Triple ball bearing, free floating metal bearing. This one actually has an 8mm turbine housing, so it's quite small, but we did that so that it would spool really, really quickly. It's still, with the 8mm, good for up to 700 horsepower and makes a shitload of boost. And I could sit here and try and tell you specs about this and why it's super cool and the best all day long, but instead, I'm gonna show you why I chose this turbo. Jason is not only an extremely good driver, but he's actually an engineer. Like, he created the housing of this turbo. The triple ball bearing system is exclusive to RHB. All of his stuff is made by him, and he is a driver, which is the only and coolest way. It's like, I know a lot of turbo companies make really great stuff and they have people in the industry and whatever, but he literally races his own stuff and then tweaks it and engineers it, and it's from what I can see and from what other people have told me that have ran his turbos, they are fucking awesome. But like I said, this is the Super 6, and right now you guys can actually use the code ROBBIE15 if you go to RHB's website. He's actually almost sold out of these guys. He also has a YouTube channel where he shows all of his racing and stuff, so make sure you guys check all of that stuff out. He's a really awesome guy, and like I said, this is designed and raced by the guy who designed it. Chinese turbos just aren't like that. So check it out. This is the only one that's actually assembled. I will just start with this guy, right? Turbo manifold on the Z engines is single. Looks like that. It actually looks really cool. This is a PRL manifold. I just picked this up from Nick when I was at a shop last, just so that I would be able to test out a couple different options while we were making this build. But what you'll notice is that the flange is not really, you're not able to like reverse it to go upside down or whatever. And because we're making this engine rear wheel drive and it's a Z single exhaust port engine, I got two 3D printed manifolds from Nick, Tuning by Nick, my tuner. You guys know that he's actually gonna be selling a full case-swap kit for the Porsches, and he runs this motor, so he has a couple different options. And since I've gone to him, he actually redesigned a completely new one. Because this is gonna be rear wheel drive, we're probably gonna need to build a motor mount right around here. And we don't know where until it's in the car. So we could go ahead and run one of Nick's manifolds, which is what I'm gonna be doing. By the way, the PRL one is just for demo purposes. That would be ideal for it to go down, but I don't know that it can because a motor mount will be there. So the other option we got, and this will become more relevant when we're actually installing it in the Genesis, is a upward facing turbo manifold, which is actually way cooler, but I can already smell all the clearance issues and stuff that we're gonna have if we do this. It's just gonna become really, really clumsy up top. A K-Series is already a skyscraper, a very tall motor. So this could be an issue. Again, we don't know. I will be running one of Nick's really cool manifolds that he's making. The thing with these is Nick's actually looks just like this. You basically, if you want it up, when you get it made, they just weld it on the other way. Problem is, Nick doesn't mass produce these things and we can't afford for me to just weld one together the way that doesn't work. For now, we're using the PRL one because it's metal, it'll hold a turbo, everything will look good. And then one day down the road when we're installing it, we will actually get it figured out. Like I said, this is kind of clocked to sit up and snugged in. I think a stock one sits more like in here, like the hot side is clocked the other way around, so the turbo sits deeper. But this might give us all the room we need and still keep this low. Out of the car, it looks whack. With the elephant trunk bolted back up in its weird position, it is officially time to make this engine rear wheel drive. It's actually a lot easier than everybody might think. This boy is huge. So this is the K-Power rear wheel drive intake manifold for, well, this one's for a K24Z3. It's an R40, but you can get them for K-Series engines. And literally, this is the only piece you theoretically need to make this car rear wheel drive, other than obviously a manual trans and everything that goes behind. And what's really cool about this intake manifold, I'm not actually sure about all of the other manifolds that you can get that are for front wheel drive cars, but this one specifically eliminates this disastrous piece that comes on the car that literally has no purpose. It bolts up to here, and then you bolt the intake manifold to this. So it's like a two-piece intake manifold, except it's not wheels, so it's not cool the more pieces they are. Comes with all the hardware, and then it comes with also this little thing, because there's a hose that comes out of the bottom of that, which I'm assuming goes right here. So you can run that hose here. There's also a couple things like idle air control valve, I think that's what that is. Map sensor holes, all kinds of jazz that I'm really not sure, and we don't have all the pieces for the build yet. But something I did run into is that this manifold does not fit over the stock studs, which I was warned about, but I knew we'd be able to figure it out. So you can see me right here backing the studs out of the engine, because thankfully I have the MPC hardware to go in here. And with the studs removed, this actually just fits right in. These are the stock injectors for now. The last thing on my mind is fueling. We still have to figure out how to build the entire swap kit, hammer that K-Tune fuel rail down over top of them, and all we gotta do now is obviously get the little pieces. We gotta get this adapter piece. We gotta get a throttle body. We gotta obviously put a belt on it. But first, we gotta build motor mounts, because this is going into a Genesis, which there's no such thing as a swap kit for. That'll be the fun part. Like I've been telling you guys all video, all the parts that I have installed are linked in the description down below. Lots of them I have discount codes for you guys to save some money. And I could sit here and blab to you guys, but this video has probably been more than long enough already. So I'm just gonna leave you guys with a quick challenge to end today's video, which is the same as the challenge on the main channel, but in case you guys are only watching one channel, my challenge for you guys is to trust the process. It's not always easy to do, and it's something that sometimes you don't feel like you're getting where you want to be, or you don't feel like it's happening the way it should. But if you have a goal and you know the road you need to take to get to it, trust that process. Do what you have to do to get there. Maybe it requires you to be posting things and you're not getting views, but keep posting. Just keep doing it until you start getting the views, because they will eventually show up unannounced. You'll never expect it. So just keep doing whatever it is that you know you're supposed to be doing, even if you're discouraged, even if you don't want to. Just trust that process until whatever it is that you're trying to achieve or get done happens. And then you'll be super thankful that you didn't just give up or just keep changing what you're doing or something like that. So that is what I leave you guys with as a little challenge to end today's video. Thank you guys so much for watching this whole entire video. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace out and stay committed.